Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to yet another episode of Somehow We Manage. Joining me today is a man who the Wall Street Journal referred to as the Don of Donations, one of the most well-respected administrators in the country, Mr. Bobby Purcell, and I'm glad to call him a friend of mine. He comes on today. He's going to share lots of good recruiting stories from his time as a coach, and he also shares some of the secret sauce to where he was able to raise hundreds of millions of dollars at NC State. So don't go anywhere. You are not going to want to miss this episode of Somehow We Manage. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming for the first time on Somehow We Manage my good friend, Mr. Bobby Purcell. Mr. Purcell, it's an honor to have you on today.
It's an honor for me to be on with you. Two Sampson County guys.
Well, see, that's a good little segue right there because I wanted to bring that up early, and I guess we can go ahead and talk about it. So you're a Clinton guy, born in Sampson County. I'm from Spivey's Corner, right down the road. So tell me about your upbringing in the those good old country back roads of Sampson County. Tell me about what life was like for you growing up in Sampson County.
Well, you were in the country. I was in the town. So
you're a city boy.
Yeah, I was a city boy.
You're a city slicker.
I was born in Laurinburg. We moved to Clinton when I was about 3 or 4 years old. What a great place to grow up. Great town, great people. I would never want to grow up anywhere else. Great schools, great sports town. On Friday nights, everybody rolled up the sidewalks and went to the football game. Those were some exciting times growing up and then being a part of it as a player in high school. But Clinton was a great place. I'm still proud. Love to go home every chance I get. Excuse me. And we're playing in the state championship game Saturday, and all my buddies are coming up to the game. We're going to get together and cheer the dark horses, hopefully, to another state championship.
Yeah, and playing in Carter Finley Stadium, which has got to be
first time.
Yeah, pretty special for you.
Yeah, extremely special. I cannot wait. It's exciting. We've played in 11 state championship games, but none of them have been in Carter Finley before. So this will be a first.
Well, maybe it'll be good luck for you. And there are obviously a lot of NC State people.
I hope so.
A lot of NC State people in Clinton. Maybe they'll be familiar with with their stadium and whatnot. Maybe it'll give you guys some good luck.
Yeah,
I'll say something else about you and where you grew up and your background. You played for some pretty some top-notch coaches. I mean, when you say the names like Bob Lewis, Bobby Robinson, Tommy Sloan, I mean, those names carried a lot of weight, not just in Sampson County and the neighboring areas, in the whole state of North Carolina. I mean, I've heard the stories about, when Coach Sloan or Coach Lewis would go to the coaches meetings, in the summertime, that people just wanted to hear what they had to say. So what would you say about, coming up and playing for those leaders, those coaches, and how that shaped you?
They all three had a great influence on my life. In fact, I talked to Coach Lewis and Coach Robinson both today. They still are impacting my life in many ways, but it was a privilege to play for them. I learned something from each of them, and they were all different. They all had their own different philosophies. Coach Robinson was always prepared. We were always prepared for anything, everything. Didn't matter what another team tried to do. We had practiced it. We thought about it. We talked about it. Coach Lewis we were really mentally and physically tough. He really took that approach. Nobody was tougher than we were playing for Coach Lewis. And Coach Sloan was just a great motivator. He really could get into your mind and get you to play hard, play above your ability. And they all three were just great coaches in their own right.
Now, another interesting thing about you is, and I'm gonna put you on the spot here, is people know you as an NC State guy, but you went to State and Carolina. So I'm gonna put you on the spot here. I'm gonna give you a chance to defend yourself. That's got to be somewhat of a weird dynamic in your life, going to both schools?
Well, I grew up a State fan. My father went to State, and I was always a State guy. And I came to Raleigh, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to major in. It wasn't going to be a lot of things State had. I really wanted to go into business or go into coaching. And State did not have a business degree or a PE degree at that time. So I had to make a choice to transfer to go where I could get the degree I wanted. So I ended up choosing between East Carolina and North Carolina. I went to North Carolina, got my degree in business administration. But the whole time I was there, I was a State fan. I wore red to the State Carolina game, and my friends respected it, and they still do now. But it's a good conversation piece a lot of times. I catch a lot of grief sometimes, but nobody ever questioned where my heart was.
No doubt about it. And you said this to me not too long ago that when State and Carolina play, that's a very special event for you. Why is that?
Growing up, Norm Sloan, Dean Smith compete against each other at State. Bill Dooley, Lou Holtz compete against each other in football. It was just growing up in Clinton, and as you grew up in Sampson County. State Carolina week was a big week, and it was just always a lot of fun and very intense. I think both programs have a lot of respect for each other, but there's a lot of dislike as well. It's just always intense, and I love the intensity of it. I love the competition of it, and we seem to always go back and forth. Who's got the upper hand? It's a pretty even rivalry in football and basketball. Over my lifetime, it's been kind of even. Although you gave Carolina a lot of credit for the continuity they've had in their basketball program, but I just love State Carolina. I love that competition. I love beating them, but we also have respect for each other.
Right, and you also told me that the previous win, what they ended the season on in Carter Finley Stadium, was one of the best ever for you. Why do you think that is?
The intensity of that game, and it seemed like it bigger than normal this year for some reason. I don't know why, but both teams were similar records coming in. We were playing well. We were starting to really gel as a team. That game was really important for us to keep our momentum going. And the place was jam-packed. You couldn't find a seat anywhere. It was coldest game I ever remember at Carter Finley Stadium, and nobody left. Everybody was there, yelling, screaming, cheering on the Pack. It was just a very intense evening that turned out the way we wanted it to turn out. So it was a great college football game and college football atmosphere.
Yeah, I agree. It was a great atmosphere.
It was electric.
It was. And there was not an empty seat in the house, just like you said.
There are bigger stadiums in the country, but there's no better place than Carter Finley on Saturday night playing against the rival.
I agree.
There's no better place. Some places they may have a lot more people there, but nobody has better intensity and better atmosphere than we have, particularly our night games.
I agree. Couldn't agree more. So obviously you're an NC State guy. You spent many, many years working in several different capacities. First, I think people, maybe not everybody knows or maybe not understand, you retired from the Wolfpack Club and now you're in a new role with NC State Athletics. So could you tell everybody, those that don't know, what your new role looks like?
Well, it sounds really important, but it's really not. I'm a special assistant to Boo Corrigan. I retired from the Wolfpack Club 3 or 4 years ago, and I was ready. I knew it was time for me to move on to something else, but I didn't want to get out of athletics. But Boo Corrigan, who I have a lot of respect for. We were good friends, and he said, "Come over here. I need you. I don't want you going. I don't want you leaving. I want you to stay here with me and come on over. I have a creative role for you." And that's what I'm right across the hall from him as we speak, and really enjoyed it.
Now, I
mean, different stuff, a lot of different things.
I'm sure
every day is a little bit different.
So, I mean, were you when you decided you were done with the Wolfpack Club? I mean, were you want to retire, just play golf every day, go to the beach? I mean, were you trying to hang it up and then you said, "Okay, maybe I'll come back"? What was your intention there?
No, everybody told me you'll know when it's time, and I kind of felt like I knew when it was time, but I did not want to get out of athletics.
Okay,
I just wanted something new. I think I'd done what I could do at the Wolfpack Club. It was time to turn that over to somebody else, like Ben Broussard, who's done a tremendous job.
Yes. Excellent job.
And, but Boo asked me to stay on, and it's just been great. I've been in NC State 42 years. NC State's my life. All my friends and the NC State people are why I'm here. I just love NC State people from Manio to Murphy and everywhere in between.
So when you got your start, it was actually in coaching on the football staff, and you were on a couple of different football staffs, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But I want to talk about in the early days when you were a recruiting coordinator. You and I have talked about this a little bit. Recruiting has just become so big, and it's this whole ordeal now. And it's like people say, it's the lifeblood of your program. How different was it back in those days? In the 80s, late 70s. I mean, how different was it to what we see today?
Well, the basic fundamentals are still the same. It's about relationships, and doing a good job evaluating. Make sure you're recruiting the right players that are going to fit your program and are skilled at the level you need them to be skilled at. But it's gotten more complicated with all the money going around, NIL money and transfer portal. You know, I'm not in it now, but I think high school recruiting is taking a back seat now to NIL recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in it, we were focused on high school. And we built our program on high school players and occasionally some junior college players if we needed to fill in a spot or two. But now this wholesale transfer is just really a total different ballgame. I'm glad I'm not involved with that directly anymore.
What's your best recruiting story that comes to mind? What's the one?
I don't know my best one. I've got quite a few, but I'll have to let me think about them. But there are a lot of great people, and every Friday night at that high school game somewhere, usually in North Carolina. My first foray, Monty Kiffin hired me to be what was called a part-time assistant coach.
Mm-hmm.
That's equal to a grad assistant, but we didn't have to go to class. We were full-time coaches. We got paid part-time. I made $3,200 a year and had a room at the dorm. And that was and I had as much money in my pocket then as I do now. But I guess the statute of limitations is up now, so I can tell this one. So Pete Carroll was the defense coordinator. And a part-time assistant couldn't go on the road recruiting. You only get the 9 assistant coaches are the only ones who could go on the road. Well, we're getting ready to get signing day, second Wednesday in February. And Pete Carroll had several. And back then, you go to the school and sign them or go to their home and sign them.
Right.
And so Pete Carroll had several guys in different areas he was going to try to sign on Sunday. He said, I need somebody to go to Virginia and sign this defensive back named Mo Ruffin at Fork Union. He said, Bobby, I want you to go. I said, Coach, I can't go. He said, well, I want you to go. He said, don't wear anything that says NC State. Just wear a plain shirt, plain jacket, plain everything. I want you to take my car and drive up there. Sign him. You can sign at 8 a.m., sign at 8 a.m. Don't introduce yourself to anybody, sign him, get out of there and come home.
Get in and get in.
That was my first signing. I wasn't even supposed to be there. But another story, we got Mo. Mo ended up playing some, but didn't finish his career, but I wish he had. But that was my Pete Carroll story. But one of you and I talked about Sandy Keita, defensive lineman in Sampson County, by the way.
Yeah.
And he's been pretty heavily recruited, and he committed to us. And I'd used up all our home visits. You could only go in their home 3 times. We'd already done that. So the night before signing day, Tuesday night, it was a real cold night. He lived on this little dirt road way back in the woods between Clinton and Salemburg. And I thought somebody just said to myself, I'll ride by there and just check, make sure everything's in place, where he's going to be and all that. So I pull up there in the front of the house, and there were 2 brand new cars sitting in front of the house with South Carolina license plates. And that really confused me. I didn't know why they were there. So I pull over the house set up on some cinder blocks. I pull right at the front door. I couldn't go in. We did not have any more home visit. So I pulled at the front door and I tooted the horn a couple times, flashed my lights. And Sandy's brother, Quincy, came out to see who was out there. And I said, Quincy, come here and get in the car. And he hopped in the car. I said, what's going on? He said, there were 2 coaches from South Carolina in there. And they got a briefcase. I don't know what's in it, but they got a briefcase. I said, well, you go get Sandy and tell him right now to come out here. I'm out here. He's committed to us. So Sandy comes out later. I said, Sandy, get in my car. And he got in the car. I said, what's going on? He said, Coach, they really want me to come to South Carolina. And it's enticing. I don't know what was going on. So I put the car in reverse and backed out, and we drove off. I just left those coaches sitting there at his house. We drove around for a couple of hours, and then I brought him home. And just little stuff like that don't seem like a lot, but at the time they're pretty intense because you had the guy committed for a month, and now some schools trying to change his mind.
Yeah, I know.
There are a lot of little stories like that.
It can be extremely competitive. A guy that you and I talked about, who you were on his staff, and he's meant a great deal to you, was Coach Sheridan. So, first off, what exactly, who, in your words, who was Coach Sheridan as a man, and what did he mean to you in your life?
Dick Sheridan, the greatest leader I've ever been around. He's a man that could be president of the United States, could be CEO of General Motors, could be a head football coach. He just had this God-given ability of leading. I never heard him raise his voice, never heard him use profanity, never heard of him drinking alcohol. He just was a man of integrity, a man of great respect that you wanted to be like, wanted to emulate, and wanted to please. He was the one. He never got on anybody. You see so many pictures of him when he's talking to somebody, he's got his arm around them.
Yeah.
That was his way of getting their attention. Just he didn't yell or raise his voice. He put his arm around you and talk to you about what you need to do or what we need to change or whatever. He's just a great leader, a great person. He had a tremendous impact. And right now, and I've said this before, I think I told you before, if I have a tough decision in my life to make, there's two things I do. I pray about it first. And then I ask myself, what would Dick Sheridan do? Because I never saw him make a bad decision.
How about that?
He was just impeccably, always had the right decision and he thought through things really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just a man of tremendous integrity and great leadership. He impacted all the coaches I worked for and played for all had impacts on me, but he was special. And I've said this before too, when you brought Dick Sheridan into a room, he was always the smartest guy in the room. Didn't matter who was in the room, Dick Sheridan was going to be the smartest guy in the room. He was very, very smart.
And he blessed us with the diamond logo, which State fans still to this day still love and are calling for. I've got a helmet. I'm not going to turn the camera on, but I got a helmet sitting up there, a little miniature one with the diamond logo. There's no telling how old it is. But you have an interesting Coach Sheridan story. Can you tell me about when they were trying to get Coach Sheridan to come down to NC State and you met with him and all that? Could you share that story with us?
Well, I'd been retained. I was on Tom Reed's staff, and I'd been retained for the transition until they hired a new coach, and it'd be up to the new coach whether he kept me or not. And I'd gone traditionally. A good friend of mine, Danny Murphy, went to East Carolina from Clinton. And every year we'd go duck hunting down in Matamuskeet over the Christmas holidays. So we'd gone duck hunting in Matamuskeet. This was before cell phones.
Yeah.
So we're down there duck hunting, and Frank Whedon was the senior associate AD at State, and they brought Dick Sheridan in to interview with him and Willis Casey, our AD. They wanted me to meet with Dick Sheridan, and they couldn't get up with me. And I didn't have cell phones, and nobody knew where we were staying. We were in this little motel. Finally, my father, they kept calling my father, and finally, somehow my father knew somebody down in Hyde County that could find me, and they got up with me, and they said, you got to get back to Raleigh. So I came back to Raleigh, drove back to Raleigh, and we went to dinner, just Dick Sheridan and myself. It's the first time I ever met him. Go to dinner at Two Guys Restaurant on Hillsborough Street. Everybody, all the old State guys remember Two Guys.
Yeah.
So Coach Sheridan, we go and sit down in the booth, and he orders a cheeseburger, double cheeseburger and fries. I ordered, I don't remember what I had, probably lasagna or something. And he said, all right, I want to pick your brains. He was so thorough. He asked me about every position. All right, tell me about the offensive line. Who's returning? What do you think about each one of them? Tight end, quarterback, wide receiver, running back, the whole thing, defense. We got through talking about offense, and he ordered another cheeseburger and fries. And the man was thin as a needle, but he could eat like a horse. They're eating. And we got through talking about defense, and he looked at me and he said, Bobby, you think we can win next year. I said, Coach, I know we can win next year. We're close. And he said, I don't see it. We beat you guys. We beat you the last 2 years in a row at Furman. I just don't see what you're saying. I said, well, Coach, trust me. I think this is my opinion. I think these guys are ready to win. Just get the right leadership. And sure enough, we turned it around and won that year.
Well, it sounds like you're a heck of a recruiter. It sounds like you sealed the deal.
I don't know about that, but Coach Sheridan changed my life. He hired me, kept me on his staff, and that was a big learning moment for me to be with him.
Well, and another guy who wasn't a terrible recruiter himself, who you said was very special to you, was Coach Valvano. And obviously, not just NC State fans, everybody knows him. You think about, we just finished V Week on ESPN, just his memory, you know, who he was, it just lives on and on. So what did he mean to you? Who was he as a man, as I said about Coach Sheridan?
Jim was, in so many ways, like Dick Sheridan, a very bright person. He was very, very smart. Those guys were extremely smart people. They really understood people and understood how to motivate people and how to get what you need to get people working together. But Jim, one of the great things about Jim, and I was with him a lot over the last few years he was here. Jim could relate to everybody. He was not above anybody. You would think maybe he would be with his persona and celebrity, but he was never above it. We go to a little country store sometime. We're on the road going to a Wolfpack Club meeting somewhere. He'd fit right in with those guys. He'd fit right in. I could take him through Sampson County. He could fit in any little place down there, or he could fit into the president of the United States or the governor of the state.
Yep.
He was the same toward everybody, and that's a very unique quality of a leader who can relate to everybody that he comes in contact with, not just the people that he perceives to be at his level. And Jim was a very humble person, believe it or not. He had confidence, but he was humble. He didn't think he was better than anybody. And just a great human being.
So we've talked a lot about coaches. Who have been some of the more memorable players that you've encountered, that you've worked with in your time in college athletics?
Well, one a lot of them stand out. I mean, tons of them. But I'm going to talk about some of the ones that you probably were under the radar, like Mike Quick. Mike Quick, we didn't throw the ball a lot when he was playing here. We ran the veer, and he didn't get a lot of catches, but he was an incredible wide receiver for a football program. And I just thought so much about him. And then I had a lot of guys like Mike Quick, but, Eric Kramer got a lot of publicity, but not like Russell Wilson and Phillip Rivers. But Eric Kramer was so good and so solid and so consistent and such a great leader. He would be one that would stand out too. We've had a lot of great wide receivers here. Naz Worthen, Hayward Jeffries, Danny Peebles. People tend to forget those guys for some reason, but they were all just exceptional players. Jesse Campbell in our secondary, Snake Benson in our secondary. These are all guys that ended up having great careers in the NFL, but kind of maybe have been forgotten here a little bit. But they were all big-time players. And Ray Agnew, I still think is probably the best defensive lineman we've ever had. And, just a big-time player. Maybe not remembered like he should be, but he was a great one.
Now, something I hear a lot of state fans talk about to this day was the excitement of the early 2000s, even in the late 90s. When I think about, it was the entertainment and sports arena then, it's PNC Arena now, built PNC Arena, and then you saw all the renovations done at Carter Finley Stadium, and it's just night and day difference what it looks like today and what it looked like, pre the early 2000s when all that was done. And you were with the Wolfpack Club, so you played a huge hand in that. I mean, what goes into that process of a huge capital project like that, of the funds and the building process and all of that? What went into that?
Well, that's a really good question. The Wolfpack Club is a private foundation affiliated with NC State. It's called an affiliated entity of the university, but we're a private foundation. So it really was an advantage for NC State to have us as a private foundation. So what we did, we put together a construction oversight committee, is what we called it. It was chaired by Larry Nixon, a great engineer from here in Raleigh. That committee met 76 times, I think, in 6 years. They were incredible. We had a bank CEO. We had 3 construction company CEOs. We had a lawyer. We had several business people on this committee that oversaw the whole project of expanding Carter Finley. And as far as the arena, we weren't involved with the construction of the arena. We were just raising funds for that. But the Murphy Center, the Wolfpack Club signed a contract with the university to rent the land from the university. And the Wolfpack Club designed the building, built the building, paid for the building, and it gifted it back to the university. We were able to avoid all the state bid processes and all those state inspection deadlines that you have to do with state projects. And we were under budget, on time, and at the time when we finished the Murphy Center, it was a state of the art, probably anywhere in the country. In fact, Bill Cowher told me that. Bill Cowher was here right after we opened it. He said, "Bobby, nothing in the NFL is as nice as the Murphy Center." Now, since then, people have built better, but at the time, it was the best. But I'll tell you another thing we did. We got our committee together, and we visited several schools. We visited Virginia Tech, Carolina, South Carolina, Clemson, Georgia Tech, Florida State, and Ole Miss to look at their facilities before we designed the Murphy Center. We took our architect, and at the time, the finest facility that we saw was the one in Carolina. So we told the architect we want and this is probably shouldn't say this, we want every room to be bigger than theirs. We want the head coach's office to be bigger than theirs. The weight room bigger than theirs. The dining hall bigger than. We made every room in that building bigger than the same room in the one in Chapel Hill, and it turned out really, really good. But and then we raised money. The two people probably most influential, in my opinion, on the arena were Steve Stroud and Wendell Murphy. Those two guys, both NC State people, were the ones that really pushed that through the legislature and make sure everything got done the way it needed to be done. So we got a world-class arena and I think a world-class stadium right side by side.
So talking about the Wolfpack Club, you guys were very successful while you were there. I mean, talk about over $500 million raised, over 20,000 donors. I mean, you guys just killed it year after year after year, and you were able to do things like that, like the renovations to Carter Finley Stadium or helping build PNC Arena. So I want to ask you, as the guy who was in charge, what was the secret, day to day? What was the philosophy when you were trying to build that?
Our philosophy always was every member matters to us. A small donor giving $100 a year is important. You don't fill up your stadium with big donors. You fill up your stadium with small donors. And we just felt like we wanted the NC State way was everybody's important. We didn't try to treat anybody different because they gave more money. We tried to treat them all equal amount of respect. The party system would take care of the ones giving more money, but sometimes a family. We talked about the Wolfpack Club family, typical family, the husband and wife, 2 kids. You got a mortgage payment, got 2 car payments. They're saving for their kids' college education. They give a little money to their church. There's not a lot of money left when they buy season tickets, buy a parking pass, drive 2.5 hours to Raleigh every Saturday in the fall to go to Carter Finley, buy all the food, concessions, gas. So we respected that. We wanted those families to know that we appreciated it, even though they couldn't give a lot of money, that they were important in our eyes. And then later, as some of those people developed wealth from whatever source, they remembered that we had treated them right, and they were more likely to want to give more to the Wolfpack Club. But there was no secret. That's just the way we try to do business.
Well, just like you said earlier, relationships. That's the key to, in my opinion, everything in life is, and it's like you've told me, is treating people the right way. And, and in the end, everything will be taken care of.
That's the Wolfpack Club. That's the Wolfpack way. I mean, treat people. We're all Wolfpackers. Some have more capacity than others, but they all love state equally.
So I want to, as I close here, I want to have a little bit of fun with you, bring up some good memories and bad. So I'll start and ask you, what have been some of the toughest losses that you can remember, the ones that stick out, the ones that you just can't get over? What are some of the toughest losses that you encountered during your time at State?
Anytime we lost Carolina.
In any sport.
any sport, particularly football and basketball, any
right.
of those. But I tend to remember the big victories more than I remember the bad defeats.
Of course.
But I don't think there are any that really stand out. You're a State fan like I am. I'm a lot older than you are, so my experiences go back further. But anytime we would lose Carolina, you have that feeling. Anytime you beat Carolina, you felt differently.
Yeah, for sure.
Some of the great wins we had were South Carolina in '86 with the Hail Mary pass, Danny Peebles from
Danny
there.
Peebles, yeah.
My favorite play ever at Carter Family was probably the same year, '86. We're playing Clemson with Danny Ford, and we ran a reverse with Haywood Jeffries, and I don't remember how far it was, 60 or 70 yards, and he ran right in front of Danny Ford, going right down the sideline to score. Dick Sheridan beat Clemson 3 straight years when Clemson was a top 5 program in the country at the time. But that one play, Haywood Jeffries, was probably my most memorable good memory of a play at Carter Finley.
Now, that you led right into my follow-up question, what were going to be your top wins. So I'll ask you this one, and I've had several guests on here and we've talked about this, but I always love hearing people's, what they remember about it, their views. The '83 championship run. I mean, it's one of the best runs in sports history. What do you recall? What sticks out to you?
Well, Tom Reed just been hired as our head football coach, and we just started spring practice, and I was on his football staff, and so none of us were able to go to Albuquerque, so we were staying here to go ahead and practice that day. So after practice, we all went over to offensive line coaches, Jim Bowman. We went over to his house, and the whole staff and most of these guys, except myself and David Horning and a couple others, were all from Ohio and different places, and this is all kind of new to them. So we go to Jim Bowman's house, and we watch the game, have some things to eat and drink, and then when we win, these guys they were just going crazy. They'd never been a part of anything. So the whole staff, the coaching staff, we drive over to the Brickyard. The whole coach said, we're out there yelling and celebrating with the students. That's just a memory I'll never forget.
And those are the famous stories that people always go back to, is how they just turned the Brickyard upside down. I mean, they almost burned it to pieces.
That was before you were born.
Yes, that was long before I was born, but I've heard many stories about, and not just that, but I mean, just, it's like you said, state fans are a different breed, and same can be said for Duke and Carolina fans too. I mean, we have a great fandom here in the state of North Carolina, but certainly state fans are super passionate.
One thing in '74 when we won, I was a freshman. I lived in Sullivan Dorm with the basketball. Okay. And I was a freshman. That year we won the ACC championship, football, basketball, baseball. I think we're the only schools that ever done that. And man, I was thinking, man, these next 4 years, if we're winning like that, it's going to be incredible. And unfortunately, nobody ever wins like that, like we did that year.
No.
Being a part of the '74 championship as a student and the '83 championship as a staff member were very special memories.
And, so at the time of this recording, it's Thursday, December 7th. So last night, you and I talked about this. They unveiled the statue of David Thompson right outside of Reynolds Coliseum. And obviously, you know David Thompson very well. You've got to know him over the years. What was that moment like, seeing that, having everybody come back together, honoring a legend like David Thompson? What was that moment like for you?
It was a signature moment in the history of this university, in my opinion. David was the greatest college basketball player of all time. I don't think there's any doubt anybody that questions that they didn't see him play. And not only that, he's probably a better person than he was a basketball player. David's a very humble Christian man that I have a lot of respect for. We're good friends, have been for a while, and nobody deserves it more. And I thought the videotape really, to have Bill Walton say that David, only one David Thompson, coming from somebody like Bill Walton, speaks volumes to what we all knew anyway, and he experienced firsthand. But David was so moved, and so his family was here. And it was interesting, too. Barry Parkhill came from Virginia, who played against David. He came to the celebration, and Phil Ford from Carolina came over, which I thought said a lot about when your competitors start showing up, when you're being honored, says a lot about what they think and respect of you.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, you'll never meet a nicer, more humble guy. And it's like I told you, for fans, they're always coming up and asking for pictures and stuff, and he never hesitates. It's always, what can I do for you? How can I help you? Just a super guy and a 10 out of 10 guy, as people.
I'll tell you a quick story about David. I was at the AC tournament in Greenville one time, and at halftime we weren't playing. It was different, some other team playing. at halftime, I was out on the concourse, just, came out to get something to drink. And there was a man, David Thompson, was leaning against the wall by himself, just, quietly watching people on. And I was standing there talking to someone. I saw this man decked out in Carolina gear, and his little boy, probably 5-year-old little boy, decked out in Carolina gear. They come walking by in front of David. And they go past David, and I watched them. And I could hear what the man said. They stopped, and he told his son, said, "Son, that's the greatest player. That's David Thompson, the greatest player to ever play in the ACC." And I said, I couldn't help it. So I went over and said, would you like to meet David? He said, "We can meet him. He would actually speak to us."
They didn't even all they had to do was ask.
I went over, and David sitting there wearing blue jeans and a ball cap. The typical David, no entourage, nobody around him. He got down on his knee and talked to that little kid for about 2 or 3 minutes. And that's David Thompson.
Yeah. No, he's special. There's no doubt about it. Well, look, we'll close on that. An extreme pleasure to have you on and tell these great stories. I mean, it's always great to talk to you and hear these things. It's interesting to me. And I'm sure everybody at home is gonna love it as well. And a huge good luck to your boys, to the Dark Horses, the Gold and Black in Carter Finley Stadium Saturday. Hopefully they can pull one out. But regardless, another great season for them. What are they sitting at? 13, 14-0, something like that?
Yeah, undefeated.
Yeah, so another great season for them. A rich tradition there at Clinton, something that you're a part of now. Wish them best of luck. And thank you for coming on. It's been a great pleasure. Always enjoyed talking to you. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Caegan. Go Wolfpack and go Dark Horses.
I'm not going to go Dark Horses, but I'll go Wolfpack.
Right. See you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for watching with us today, folks. And of course, a huge thank you to Mr. Bobby Purcell for coming on and sharing some of his great stories with us. Always a huge thank you to Mr. J.R. Mel Quitman, the former Wolfpack football player who makes this thing all nice and shiny for us. So a big thank you to him as always. But thank you so much for watching with us today, folks. We are on social media. Share this episode if you like what you saw. Share it with your friends. It helps us reach a lot more people. And as always, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.